it should surprise no one that Donald Trump has gone on the attack against the prosecutors and judges who are trying to hold him accountable. This has always been his standard practice. For many, including nearly the entire Republican organization, this behavior has become normalized, imitated, and even praised. Although for anyone not named Trump, you can bet that there will be consequences, fines, or possible jail time. Look, I'm old enough to remember way back to 3 days ago when the judge overseeing the federal trial into Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election ended her first hearing with this warning to both parties. Quote, "The more a party makes inflammatory statements about this case, the greater the urgency will be that we proceed to trial quickly." Judge Chanya Chutkan added, "I caution all of you and your client, therefore, to take special care in your public statements about this case. I will take whatever measures are necessary to safeguard the integrity of these proceedings." Look, Judge Chutkan invoked the well-known legal precedent of keep my name out your mouth. But of course, it didn't work because Trump was on the attack in less than 48 hours. Yesterday, he reposted a photo of the judge that was referred to her as an Obama left-wing activist judge and falsely claimed that she openly admitted she's running election interference against Trump. Not leaving well enough alone, at 1:14 this morning, Trump also posted that she was, quote, very biased and unfair, and that she obviously wanted him behind bars. Back with me is Joyce Vance, and joining me is Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor and legal affairs columnist for Politico magazine. Look, I will start with this because this galls me. Renato, you have a former president of the United States who is actively, we're beyond poking the bear, right? This is not Yogi and picnic baskets. He's clubbing the bear over the head by constantly attacking the judge who is actually overseeing a case about him trying to violently overthrow the country. I'm going to ask the question that I get asked by regular people all the time. Why isn't he in jail already? Why has he not already been thrown in jail for making these kinds of statements? He has a history of witness and judge intimidation, at least verbally.
Well, I actually think in this case, it's because Judge Chutkan is actually very smart, savvy, experienced litigator, and she knows exactly what levers to pull to hold his feet to the fire. I mean, you read that quote a moment ago, and I think that speaks volumes. What she's saying is, I'm not going to get involved in some First Amendment argument with you in the middle of a presidential campaign where you're going to have some argument that somehow I'm silencing your free speech right. What we're going to do to solve this problem is we're just going to get to trial ASAP. And I think one thing we know is that Donald Trump's entire plan is to try to delay this past the election. And she was basically letting him know and putting a shot across the bow, I have the power here. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to have a very, very speedy trial, if you want time to prepare, if you want extra time and extra accommodations, you're not going to have any nonsense. I actually thought that was a brilliant move on her part. And that's the sort of thing, in my opinion, that is what's going to ultimately move the lever. And because I think Donald Trump listens to actions and power, not words.
Joyce, so basically what we're hearing is Judge Chutkan, she did the reverse of what parents do, right? It's like, if you're not quiet, I will turn this car around. She basically said, I will drive there faster if you guys keep talking. So here's the thing. What would that actually look like? What is a speedy trial? I mean, because at this particular point, I mean, it's been 2 years since the attack. How could she actually move this forward? Would she have the power to say, Trump's legal team doesn't have as much time to do research? Could she say, I'm not going to let as many witnesses? What would speeding it up actually look like if Trump continues to violate the protective order?
So her obligation is to guarantee Trump's lawyers and the former president have adequate time to prepare for trial, that his due process rights are observed. But that's not a set number of days, like the 70 days called for in the Speedy Trial Act. There's a lot of judicial discretion involved. And so, for instance, instead of accommodating requests for week-long vacations ahead of trial or time to attend family gatherings, she might say, sorry, we're out. We can't take those sorts of detours because we need to go ahead and get a jury struck and in the box before your client can taint the jury pool anymore. And she could insist on a fairly straight-line schedule going forward. To Renato's point, she is an experienced and very smart jurist, and she will not permit herself to become agitated because Donald Trump notoriously likes to try to poke the tiger. I guess we say it a little bit differently in my house. It's a tiger, not a bear. But either way, federal judges are skilled in avoiding that provocation. You know, we saw her do it with Judge Curiel, poking, fun at his Mexican heritage. She did it with Judge Tiger, one of the judges in California, who was involved in the immigration litigation. What we've seen from the federal judiciary is great restraint, great professionalism, and an understanding that this is not some sort of a fight between them and Donald Trump. This is about delivering the people's justice. I think we'll see her call him back into the courtroom. She may admonish him. It will be professional. It will not be personal. But judges believe in progressive discipline if we're talking about her and the way one might interact with a small child. And she will be very explicit with him before she goes to the next level of disciplining him in order to ensure that everyone involved can get a fair trial. That means the people, you and me, as much as it does the defendant in this case.
Renato, we're going to move to another judge right now. The judge overseeing Trump's hush money case has just come out and said, look, I'm not going to recuse myself. Judge Juan Merchan has said, there were accusations from Trump's team. They had argued that the judge's daughter had political and financial interests because at one point she worked for a firm that worked for Joe Biden. And he said, yeah, too bad. That's my daughter. I'm still going to work on this case. I've got to ask you, I can play devil's advocate here. I mean, is there a potential problem here? Is this something that Trump's team could argue again? Because frankly, if there were a judge investigating Joe Biden, if there were a judge investigating a prominent Democrat, and they had a son or daughter or a spouse that had worked for the campaign of the opposition, I think that's a reasonable question, isn't it?
Look, it's certainly something that should be raised, and we should consider, let's say, the appearance issues. But I will just say a couple of things here. First of all, this would not be the child working directly for, in this case, Joe Biden. It's her law firm, right, working for Biden. But look, ultimately, at the end of the day, judges make decisions regarding whether they recuse or not. And typically, courts are very deferential when, let's say, a court of appeal is looking at the issue of whether or not a judge is obligated to recuse. They very much defer to that judge's judgment. And that's what I expect to be the case here. And so, I think Donald Trump is going up against the judiciary that ultimately, I agree with Joyce's sentiment here. The judiciary is not only professional, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the judiciary wants to move cases along themselves because they have a lot of defendants who need justice. And, a lot of criminal defendants don't like their judge. So the rules are set up to make it very difficult for criminal defendants to get rid of the judge.